Hello, welcome to Pixel Life Gaming. In this video, we will be looking at the prologue mission My Country Calling featured in the War Stories campaign section of Battlefield 5. We will be analysing the mission, searching for any historically accurate or inaccurate content. We will then compare these findings with any real-world scenarios and events that occurred during the mission settings. But before we begin, let's have a quick overview of the mission that will be featured in this video. My Country Calling is the prologue mission to the War Stories campaigns featured within Battlefield 5. The mission introduces the player to the types of fighting and scenarios that they will encounter within the other campaigns of the game. After the intro cinematic, which introduces the start of the Second World War, the mission is divided into several segments of combat, beginning with Narvik in Norway in 1940 to Nijmegen Bridge in the Netherlands in 1944. Each segment of the mission is dedicated to a particular type of combat experienced during the conflict, ranging from special forces raids and frontline infantry fighting to tank and fighter aircraft combat. Now we've had a look at the mission, let's analyse the historically accurate content within. When it comes to the historical accuracy of this mission, there are many areas to take into consideration. This is due to the mission being set across many battlefields from different years of the war between various nations that took part in the conflict. By having this mission cover such a large expanse of the conflict, it ultimately suffers from varying degrees of both accurate and inaccurate historic content, ranging from weapons and vehicles entering service sooner than in the real world and battles being fought in the wrong year. From the very opening, in the cinematic section, the game introduces the player to the conflict being portrayed within the title, informing them that, once again, Britain is at war with Germany.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note. I have to tell you now, this country is at war with Germany.
This section of the cinematic comes in the form of the original audio of the radio broadcast made by the then Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain in 1939. Featuring this element would seem to suggest that the rest of the mission will retain an extremely high level of historical accuracy throughout. However, during the first gameplay segment of the mission, this is quickly overturned. The immediate inaccuracies occur within this section from observing the types of weaponry and vehicles that are present. The segment is set in the Norwegian port city of Narvik in 1940 with an Allied airborne assault on the docks there. The section sees the player's character wielding the Sten submachine gun, which, like several other weapons in the segment, was not available at that time during the war. This, however, could have easily been rectified by replacing the weapon with one that was used at that time, for example with the Thompson submachine gun instead. Alongside the Sten, this segment also contains the FG-42, which was first issued to German paratroopers in 1943. As well as these weapons, at the end of this particular section, the unmistakable appearance of the Tiger I heavy tank is also a historical inaccuracy for this time of the conflict. This moment in the segment is used as a transition to the next battlefield of the mission, so with that in mind, for this video we will do the same. For the second segment of the mission, the player is transported to North Africa, involved in the fighting in Libya in 1941, using a Tiger I heavy tank. Once again, this section of the mission is fraught with historical inaccuracies in the form of vehicles entering combat service prematurely. Many of the vehicles, including the player's Tiger tank within the segment of the mission, entered frontline combat service later than depicted within the game, with the Tiger and long-barreled Panzer IV tanks entering service in 1942, as well as the Allied Sherman tank, and the Tiger first being sent to North Africa in 1943, involved in the fighting of the Tunisia campaign of that year. With that in mind, this segment could have easily been an accurate depiction by changing the setting to Tunisia 1943 rather than Libya in 1941. Although there are these inaccuracies within the first two segments of the mission, this begins to change, with the segment set in Tunisia in 1942. For this section of the mission, the player ambushes a German convoy using a sniper rifle as they advance through a canyon pass in North Africa. The only seemingly inaccurate part of this segment is that it is set in 1942 at Kasserine Pass, which would have easily been accurate by changing the year to 1943. All other aspects, such as the style of the ambush, the weapons and vehicles in the mission, and the player's character, are seemingly accurate to the time and period of the section. The following section, in which the player controls a Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighter aircraft, is also portrayed to a highly accurate level. This segment sees the player piloting the fighter aircraft in 1943 over the city of Hamburg, intercepting a British bomber squadron attacking the city, before engaging British fighter aircraft escorting the squadron in an aerial dogfight. This type of situation occurred many times for both sides throughout the conflict, with the early part of the war seeing the roles reversed, with British fighters attempting to intercept German bomber and fighter squadrons during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. Once again, being set later in the conflict seems to have resolved many of the inaccuracies found in the gameplay sections prior to the final segment, the defence of the bridge at Nijmegen. In this final segment, the player must take part in an assault on the German defensive positions at Nijmegen Bridge during Operation Market Garden in 1944. The player finds themselves against numerous enemies during the battle while supported by Allied infantry and Sherman tanks. The weapons and vehicles depicted within this segment are all accurate for that period of the war, even the V-1 rocket that appears at the end of the segment. But although the weapon was available and used at that time, due to the inaccurate nature of the V-1 rocket, it was only properly used against targets behind Allied front lines, such as London and the port of Antwerp, rather than military targets at the front. The mission ends with a final cutscene which hints at some of the events that will occur during the remaining missions of the War Stories campaigns and other game modes of the title, such as the online multiplayer. All this aside, possibly the best element of the mission is the emotional storytelling throughout both the interactive combat gameplay and, in particular, the cinematic cutscenes within the game. This aspect of the mission is an element that is often felt lacking in many other titles on the subject and can be viewed as a highly accurate portrayal of the true cost of war. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed everything that was discussed in this video, and if you did, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe and check out some other playlists and videos on our channel. Until the next time, goodbye.